almost there.
Okay.
All right, we're live on Facebook.
Okay. So at this point, we just call to order and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pam, do you have a flag available?
Getting it. Sorry, I had to minimize it for a second. Here we go. You see it?
No. We see your drive.
All right, let me stop and try. I clicked on the wrong thing, maybe. Let me get this open again.
We could all stand to the Borough Hall because we know a flag's there.
It is.
Kate, I love your library, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Are you seeing it now?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Fine.
Right.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to
the republic for which it stands,
stands
one nation, under God,
one
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you and good evening. I'm going to open up with the Sunshine Statement. This is the Open Public Meeting Acts notice. This meeting is being held in accordance with the public laws of 1975, Chapter 231. An adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a notice sent to the Asbury Park Press, to River Times and Star Ledger, and posted in the main lobby of the municipal building and on the municipal website. One more thing I am going to add is just to share the statute on the duties of the Charter Study Commission. It shall be the function and duty of the Charter Commission to study the form of government of the municipality, to compare it with other available forms under the laws of this state, to determine whether in its judgment, the government of the municipality could be strengthened, made more clearly responsive or accountable to the people, or whether its operation could be more economical or efficient under a changed form of government. And that is the scope of our charge here. Thank you. Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Blackwood,
Present.
Commissioner Taylor,
Present.
Commissioner DuPont,
here.
Commissioner Forrest,
Present.
Commissioner Oakson.
Here. Okay. The next item we have on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of January 5th, 2022.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, who's seconding?
A second.
Okay, is everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? No? Okay, so moved. At this time, we don't have any resolutions, so we would go forward with our reports and presentations. Okay, so first we have is we are attempting to conduct these interviews from past BAs to present. So we would have Stanley Sickels to go on first.
I sent him a link, but he logged in as an audience member, so I can bring him in now.
Okay, great.
Right, he is on.
Madam Chair, as Mr. Sickles comes in, would you like me to chat about some of the kind of the organizational items we discussed about the interviews?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I believe Mr. Sickles is coming online, and I see some of the other speakers for interviewees for tonight are on as well. In working with the commissioners, and if obviously subject to the discretion of the full commission, we just wanted to chart out some, ground rules for not only these interviews of the current administrator and former administrators, but different parties in general. So everyone kind of has an expectation for how they would go. So some proposed thoughts that we put together. Excuse me, since it's an interview, we would ask that interviewees just make any limited introductory remarks that are just simply pleasantries and limit those to a minute. The goal here really is not to have, statements or kind of pontifications, not that any of these individuals would be doing that, but to streamline things in the form of questions that are asked by members of the commission, with the dialogue intended to focus on the form of government as the chair laid out in mentioning the statutory call of our commission. Since it's a voluntary interview and not a deposition or anything, interviewees may certainly decline to answer questions if they so choose. And to that point, we note that there is no goal or desire to individually name individual employees or put anyone in an uncomfortable position. So if an interviewee wants to speak to substantive comments that may be sensitive due to personnel or other matters, they could certainly decline to comment in this forum, and they may propose to speak at a subcommittee of the Charter Study Commission, which is the system that we're going to be using for current employees to address any personnel concerns. Another consideration was for each commissioner to have an uninterrupted period to ask questions, targeting about 5 minutes each, and then all the commissioners able to kind of engage with the interviewee at the end as time permits, with the target of 30 minutes per interviewee. And just a reminder that on the agenda, the public comment period will follow after all of the comments that are made. So those were kind of the thoughts that were put together this afternoon with the chair and vice chair, certainly subject to the discretion of the full commission, but I did want to lay those out there and, for the commission's feedback and whether that'll govern tonight.
Thank you. So first we have is our former board administrator, Stanley Sickels. And in terms of each, we would like Stanley to give an introduction for about 1 or 2 minutes, and then we will go in and each commissioner will have 5 minutes to answer questions. I was thinking maybe we could start in reverse alphabetical order, which would mean that would be Kate, if she's okay with that, but starting with the questions. No problem. Okay.
Am I on?
Yes, you're on.
Oh, okay. Normally you see myself on the screen here. Well, good evening. I was asked to call in and assist the committee and or the commission. Just a little form of background. I started with the borough in 1979 as a part-time fire marshal. Went full-time in 1980, and that was under Mayor Michael Arnone. I served under the first administrator, Peter Repetti. I continued when he left under Larry Riccio, and then Sally Levine, and then Marta Person. And I was appointed acting administrator in November of 96, I think it was 95 and appointed in 96. That's basically the background. In 1990, as fire marshal, they combined they asked me to take on not only the fire marshal, but the construction official position. It was a little bit of a trying time because the state had just adopted a retroactive fire code and a new construction code. And I was charged with enforcing those codes through the business district. I got to work with the business district quite closely. In fact, I was empowered under the state statute to grant variations and seek alternatives to some of the strict compliance. I use that authority and quite often to secure safety, but also find compromise. I was subsequently appointed to a committee to form a rehabilitation code for the state, and served on that committee. And that action was actually awarded a Ford Foundation Award for good government. So my beginnings in the borough were not necessarily appreciated by a lot of the business community or property owners, but I will say probably there was a very big property owner that I butted heads with quite a bit. We have some very excellent fruits of his labors. However, it was tough getting there. And I can say that we made amends at the end. Towards the end of his life, he actually asked to have lunch and apologize for the way he treated me all those years. And I think that that's one of the things I was able to do with the borough is try and work with people and seek compromise and get things done. That's all I have really for opening statement. I was born and raised there. I was glad to work there. I retired from the borough in 2017 is my last year there. Or actually it's my first, yeah. It's a fog already. But I do miss Red Bank, but I love being 8 miles from my new granddaughter. So I'm enjoying retirement.
Well, thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Sickels. Good evening. I'm Catherine Oakson, one of the commissioners. I moved to town while you were our administrator. I moved here in, I guess, 2008, finally settled here. And, you know, I used the municipal building, municipal services under your direction, you know, quite a bit over those years while you were here. But it wasn't until actually Hurricane Sandy that I became really acquainted with the functions of your administration and helping residents and a lot of direction around town. And I remember pretty clearly a lot of good communication. And so I just want to take a moment to thank you for that direction at that period of time. While you were not confirmed until fairly recently, I'm going to kind of give my questions this evening follow the notion of good government. And so I'm very interested in your personal opinion about good government first, but specific to a framework. And so I'm very concerned about efficacy in our prior interviews and presentations or so far, and in all of our sort of academic reading about form of government. A big piece of this is the idea of efficiency, right? We're serving residents in town, we're keeping business moving, and the municipality should be humming along. So I'm looking at these kind of 4 cornerstones of efficacy, obviously maintaining compliance, which is something that you already mentioned, you know, these new statutes or new policies that had to be put in place by somebody in town. At what point should government be beneficial? How is it beneficial to its residents and people who come here? And also fairness to a degree, right? Starting new things, new initiatives, creating new positions, you know, the sort of expansion and contraction that happens inside of any office or machine. So, you know, if we could start with your idea of what good government is based on your experience in Red Bank, and maybe if you could talk to me a little bit about efficiencies and the mechanisms that happen in our form of government, who you had to, or how you had to address changes, what kinds of motions, whether it was a resolution from the council or backing law that required you to do it. Could you speak to those ideas, please?
Well, I actually participated in all those things, whether it meant changing ordinances to address issues, changing personnel and organization to make it more efficient. I'll give you a few examples. One of my proudest efforts was I was hearing there were problems with our senior center director at one point, and through the council representative. She asked to have lunch with me one day, and I did have, in the early days, I had a very good relationship with the council. The council chairs would visit their departments, and if they had a problem, they would come and talk to me about it. And I remember Betty Thompson coming to me having a problem with the senior center, and there were issues that were attributable to, well, let's just say there was a need to make a change. And I discussed it with the mayor, and they discussed it with the rest of the council and gave me the okay to allow for the change. And sometimes we tried to do these things. I tried to be diplomatic in these things. I would call the person in saying the council would like to make a change, give them the opportunity if they wanted to maybe look for other employment and work out an arrangement. And usually it worked pretty well. And we were able to replace that person with our welfare director, Frida Terry, who did an excellent job as the welfare director. When she came to work, I had to dismiss the prior director. And when she came in to fill that position, she was the secretary in the senior center. She took what was a caseload of about 220 clients, and she managed that office down to 10. She would have clients, when you come for your checks, don't come in here dirty, don't come in here smelly. This is a business meeting. And long and short of it, they would come in and she'd have job appointments for them. Contact this person, contact that person. So the welfare director's position became a victim of its success. And that sort of coincided with our need to make a change in the senior center. And I recommended that we combine those two offices in one place, and we got very good efficiency out of that. And as you know, under Frida Terry, the senior center was award-winning and very, very, very useful for our community. I was lucky to have, it was funny that I came on under Mike Arnone, and Mike, to this day, and I'll tell the story, when Ed McConnell won the election for mayor, I was told that, oh, he's going to fire you. He's going to fire you. Ed had run for council against my brother and beat my brother. They were very friendly. And long and short of it, Ed reappointed me. And he says, oh, no, we're fine. And then I had a problem with coordination with special events. I would tell an event organizer, you know, this is what I need for fire marshal. Well, then they would go to the police and get what they need, and they go to public works. And the day of the event, you know, they didn't comply with either of those because they didn't know what to do. So when Ed first took office, he asked, anybody have any problems, anything? And I said, yes, we have this problem. We need sort of a committee, you know, we all need to be in the same room to coordinate these things. I said, good, great idea. You're the chairman. And then that's how I got involved with special events. And it was that type of interaction that we problem solved as a team. The council worked as a team. The department heads worked as a team because they were all represented at these special events, and that led to teamwork in other things. Whether it be a street program, a road program, a water program, even Parks and Rec. We tried to do it as a team approach. Well, we need to have this person at the table during the planning so they don't show up when we're doing something. So, oh, wait a minute, you can't do that. What about this? And that worked very well for a long period of time. You bullet pointed quite a few things. Can I knock off something else? I mean, is there something I missed?
No, I guess maybe just to, and I appreciate that, because that's what I'm interested in, these ideas of growing efficacy. When didn't it work?
When I want to say in my last 10 years, it seems the council wasn't working together. And plus, we used to have the chairman of the committee would be in dialogue with the department head. And if the department head had some issue that they couldn't solve, and maybe they had come to me or maybe they didn't, most of them learned to come to me because we had department head meetings and whatnot. But they would come, hey, we're having a problem with this. Or if they had a problem with the department head, then they would come to me. And then I would research it and I would write it up come develop a proposal with the committee or the committee chair. And then I take it to the mayor at the time and say, this is what the committee chair wants to do. And we would try and put it forward on the agenda. I think we also got bogged down in committee meetings. It used to be the chair would come to meet with me and or the department head. Or if the department head came to me with a problem and we needed input from the council, we would bring the chair in. And then the chair would talk to the committee. My last 10 years, let's say, it seemed that the whole committee had to meet with the department head once a month. And we would bring things to the department head. Some things were slam dunk, but other things, well, I don't know, we have to discuss it. And it seems we committed the things to death. And it became, you know, my 40 or 50 hour days went to 60 hours or weeks between all the committee meetings and meetings at night, and you know, sometimes meetings on weekends because some council people couldn't make it at night.
Perhaps I'm asking you to opine here, but are the meetings something you deemed necessary in your position at that time?
Meetings were great if we could walk out of there with a decision.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were some things we had meetings on that we never got a decision on. And then things had to be done in a timely fashion. Or then they make up their mind and say, okay, we want to, you know, go for this. Well, now it's wintertime. We shouldn't be doing this in the winter. Or now it's that funding cycle for grants ended. We have to wait for the next funding. Or it was something we needed to go through the Monmouth County Improvement Authority for funding. Well, that cycle had already ended. We have to wait till next year, and it delayed things.
Okay.
And I don't know what it was. I had it seems it got more political in the last 10 years of my office. It was more about what's best for the town and working together in the early days. And I was there 38 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with every administrator up to me. But it was more difficult in the last, I'd say, 10 years is probably a good thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Mark, I think you're up.
Thank you. Hey, Stanley, how are you?
Good, Mark.
It's good to hear from you. Thank you for joining us tonight. I was privileged to be a councilman during the twilight of your career here. You and I got to know each other and worked very closely together in those last couple of years, leading up to your retirement. And I just want to kind of piggyback on what Kate was asking. You mentioned that in the early days, the council worked together. They kind of had a unified purpose. You seem to describe a situation that the borough form of government allows for, which is this kind of siloing of council people being, responsible for particular departments as a committee chair or, as a liaison to a particular department. And it seems to me from your statements that it works well when it works well, and it doesn't when it doesn't. Do you think that's a fair way to assess
well,
it?
I think majority of the council I dealt with thought of themselves as the chair in representing the department at the council level, as opposed to oversight in the department. It was more like the department head is supposed to oversee the department. And if there are issues with the department head, the chair, if they hear it at the council level, they would go to the department head and say, I'm hearing it. Most of the time they come to me because most of you worked, but some would go direct. And all I asked of them, if you have a problem, let me know. And a lot of times I would get in the middle of something between a couple of council people, and I didn't even know what was going on. And that was probably the toughest part of the job, is when I was kept out of the loop. And I don't know why. You know, some people felt I was maybe a checkpoint to things, but when I got things from the council, I would go to the department head and address it. And if it was an issue that I thought was going to need council or the mayor's improvement, I would give heads up to those people. And or I asked to meet with them to discuss it, maybe with their committee or with the department head or our professionals, depending on what the issue was. Well, we got a lot done. I mean, between the Route 35 bridge, they came to us with a plan for, sidewalk on one side, no shoulder on one side. They wanted me to sign off that first. It was my first meeting as an administrator. I said, I'm not signing off on this. What, are you kidding me? You're telling me the people on the west side of the borough, can't have a sidewalk to walk to Middletown, or the car's not going to break down coming south? It was unsafe design. And it turned out, I said, I'm not signing it. And I got the council backing. And then they said they came back with said it's going to cost another, 1.2 or 1.5 million. And said, okay, well, what's the problem? So, well, the money came from the Northeast Regional Transportation Board. Well, who's on the board? Well, every county. Well, who's the county rep? Ted Arizona. Well, the authority was given to me, go meet with Ted. I also met with Judy Stanley. I knew she had a lot of power at that time. And at one point, that bridge was changed. And working like that, working together, getting the council behind it, we got the Bayshore Mayor's Group involved as well. And, the whole, it's one thing we learned to work collaboratively. Pam was there when we formed a construction partnering team. They wanted to have, they told us the traffic delays would be 8 hours. They were going to detour before the bridge at Front Street. It's crazy. You got to detour in Eatontown. You got to detour, exit 117 on the Parkway. You got to let the trucks go north and get past this point. We can't have 8-hour delays in red light. And it's a matter of getting everybody together. You get talking to the council, getting the political side of it going, and we were able to, work with the business community. We actually formed a construction partnering team. They hired a PR firm to get the word out. And we set up subcommittees, police and DOT, and we contacted the trucker unions and all the big employers, have their employees take different routes. But that's the collaborative effort. And because there was a team, everybody worked together on it.
So when you're using the term we, and that sounds like action in concert, between the mayor, the council, the administrator, department heads. I guess to make those decisions that help the borough function properly in this form of government. Do you think that either of those the entities, either the political body, the mayor and the council, or the administrator and the department heads should be empowered one way or the other to improve efficiency with the government and how it operates?
Well, the most efficiency can come when we have strong department heads and a strong administrator that can deal with the day-to-day issues, and the elected officials stay as a resource to the department heads. Surely they have responsibility for that department as the department chair, basically to oversee it, to represent to the council. But sometimes it was just day-to-day issues that were getting in the middle. I would get a directive one day to enforce flag ordinances on the property. And okay, we send code enforcement out to send flag ordinances. Well, then next thing you know, somebody else would contact the mayor and say, oh, we don't want that done. Well, wait a minute, I can't enforce against one and not enforce against the other. That sort of thing. you know, when they get involved with the day-to-day, it makes the day-to-day a problem. And some people just didn't know what to do. And it took up a lot of time. So in the straight, it works well when people are trying to do what's best for the borough. And knowing that although the people may disagree with their personal opinions, that they work collaboratively as a group for the better of the borough. It just seems, like I said, the last 15 years, it got very political. And I think that's probably why you're where you are today. Seems decisions weren't made until somebody checked with somebody.
So that led to some serious inefficiencies in the general inability to make the borough function properly. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I may have something to follow up with later, but I'm going to turn it back over to the rest of the commission. My best to Donna and the family, Stanley. Thank you.
Thank you. And to yours. Next.
Next up will be Ben Forrest.
Hello, Stanley.
Ben, how are you?
I'm okay, thank you. Glad you're here. So I'm listening. So I don't want to repeat some of the things you've already talked about. I guess I mean, it sounds like that basically when you were given direction and a policy and the council worked together to keep things consistent, things went well. And trouble started when it was kind of meddling for whatever reason. Does that seem? I'm trying to get my head around some of the points you made. You know, when a particular member of the governing body, you know, would talk to each other and not keep you in the loop. Is that a fair understanding of when, you know, some of your biggest frustrations happen?
The chain of command was breached. People would go direct to the department. They hired an administrator because we had volunteer council people and a mayor. Mayor was a dentist at the time. And there was day-to-day ops that had to be taken care of and a lot of things that had to be addressed. And so, and I learned different ways of dealing with those things by working under those different administrators. Everybody had their own way. Pete Repetti, you think everybody was a friend and he could get the most out of you. There were some other council people that couldn't. Sarah Levine was fantastic. She was, you know, do your job. You know, come to me if you need help, that sort of thing. And it worked out. And most of the council were the same way. You know, any problem? You know, I get a phone call. Hey, how's things going? All right. Any problems? Nope, not really. Or if there was something coming up, said, you know, I think, you know, we may have to talk to somebody about this. And, or maybe one department's having a problem because another department it may have some joint responsibility over something, whether it be a park issue or whether it be a utility issue or whatever. And maybe the department heads weren't working it out. So maybe we would work through the chair of one department to talk to the chair of the other department to sort of guide things through. That's how it was. But then it seems after a while, we started getting full-time council people, for lack of a better term. They were, you know, more involved in the day-to-day than they really should have been. And the other thing, department heads were told to do things that I didn't know about. And then when certain things didn't get done, I was blamed. You know, why wasn't this done? Well, you didn't tell me. You didn't ask me. I knew nothing about it. So
how about in the hiring process? Was that the same kind of thing where people would get involved, or were you given a free hand to hire who you thought was the most qualified?
if there was a downfall, it was when we didn't hire the most qualified. In the earlier days, it was great. We were taking applications, so the department heads would give me a job description, we would post it or advertise it. Applications would come in. I would send the applications to the department head, and then we would meet. Okay, who do you want to interview and why? And basically we start scheduling the interviews. And then we got it down to, let's say, the top 3. All right, then let's look into these people a little bit deeper. And then we would call in the department chair and say, look, we recommend this person. These are the other, and they had questioned about that. Well, then, okay, we have the other 2 top 3. But for the most part, and again, in the earlier days, it was usually done by the department head. And when they were ready to make a choice, then we go to the council about making an offer. Sometimes we had to discuss with the council a change in pay grade or the possibility in order to attract the better candidate. And then we have to get the council involved, and also the treasurer and whatnot. But I think the problems we had, we had problems where we hired people that weren't, let's say, the best candidate, and sometimes it worked out, and sometimes it was troublesome.
Okay. Also, on a somewhat different topic, what do you think of the elections of council members every year? I mean, if you were, was your control of the universe, did it matter? Would it have been easier to have it every, less often, like some towns do? I mean, one of the things we're evaluating here is, frequency of elections, that sort of thing, and even nonpartisan elections. Do you have any opinions, Stanley, you'd like to share about on those topics? It's okay if you don't want to say anything. I'm just asking.
Well, I guess as it was every 3 years for what, 2 seats. So it wasn't, you had an election every year, but it wasn't the whole kit and caboodle. It's tough to say. Sometimes you need that. Maybe somebody wasn't working out, and and it may have showed, and you make a change. Other times it was tough. You change them every 2 years, and you're just getting up and running, and people learn about the town and learn about their department or what needs to be done. And the next thing you know, you lose them because of a political reason, as opposed to an objective reason. So, elections are what they are. Like I said, I lived through one. I was told I was going to be fired when a certain person won, and that guy not only kept me on, made me a construction official, made me the administrator, and I retired from Burbank.
And thank you, Stanley.
Okay.
I don't know who's next. Is it Michael DuPont?
I'm up. I'm ready. Hey, Stanley. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Michael. You too.
It's good to hear your voice. Sounds loud and clear. And congratulations on your granddaughter. That is, in the end, what life is all about. Really appreciate you coming in and giving us a sense of history and recommendations here. This committee is charged with, studying the form of government to see and determine if, in fact, a change is necessary. As you know, this committee was voted overwhelmingly by 2-1 for this study to occur. And, we're trying to determine if it's the form of government or if it's the people who are just failing to hear. And so one of the things that I point out, at least in your presentation or your interview, was the need for a chain of command. And I didn't realize until you just said the number of mayors that you served under. And it seems like the early mayors had a strong voice and delegated the authority to the borough administrator to act and to be the representative of the town. And it's clear from your presentation that that helped. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And so it appeared that at some point in time, and after I was booted from the council, that there was a study done by the government strategy group. And that governance strategy group, highlights some of the complaints that you had during the later years of your career. And I guess the question that I have is it the form of government, or is it the people, or is it both?
Well, having not worked under a commission form of government, I know Tinton Falls does and Long Branch does. I really can't speak to that. I do know it was more difficult. Back to your question.
So I guess my question to you is: it seems to me that things started to fall apart when communication from the top stopped, and when you were not giving any direction. Is that accurate?
All right, you're back, Mike.
Is that accurate? Can you hear me now, Stan?
I can hear you now.
Okay. So it
You're
seems
frozen.
that the last number of years in your employment, the communication broke down, and it seemed to break down at the top. Is that accurate?
There was a different style of management.
And, when you read the government strategy group, there's a continued theme of a breakdown, and it uses the term breakdown of clear lines of communication, direction, responsibility, and accountability. And was that because the form of government? I mean, when you were the borough administrator, there was never an ordinance that required you to do your job. Was that because there was clear directives from the top, and then over the course of time,
there was a general ordinance that worked for the mayor and council, but the council and the mayor tended to go through the chain of command.
Right.
Now, the one, I think, one exception, and maybe it was due to habit, but I know the police commissioner under Tommy Hendelman for years, and then Artie Murphy, they would deal directly with the police chief. But when there were things that were non-police matters, administrative or personnel or whatnot, then it would, come up through the ranks from the chief and the chairman to me. Whether it be a hearing on an officer, or there be an issue or some administrative problem or a budgetary problem, the chain of command was clear. The police chief would work, to the council, but the council would ask me to work with the police chief to help get it done. But Public Works, I can't tell you how many times things are being done I didn't know. And people say, well, the treasurer would come to me, what are they doing? There was no budget for it. Somebody had given somebody some direction to go ahead and do something, and then we had to skirt around and find out what's, try and make it work.
Right. So was the breakdown of the chain of command caused by the borough form of government, or by a lack of direction or strategy?
I think it was the persons in the positions.
So they were given.
It was again, rather than be liaisons to the departments, people felt the departments were theirs and would get their hands into the departments, give direction without us knowing what was going on.
and early in your career, you didn't have the lack of communication. Was that because there was strategic goals in place and the committees knew what they were trying to reach, and then towards the end of your career there was no strategic goals in place, there was no vision?
I think it was a lack of control or lack of respect amongst the members of the council.
The lack of
There was-
disrespect for who? The borough administrator?
consideration. Probably the word consideration
The what?
is probably consideration is the better word. That I just, in working with mixed councils for quite a long time, the earlier councils worked together, even though they may have been a different party animal, and later on it became very partisan.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Stanley,
don't know that.
no,
I'm
I think you hit some good points. It's clear that you've worked under many or a number of different mayors. You worked on councils that were different parties. You worked on councils that were all parties, and it was clear that in your presentation that there was certainly the beginnings of lack of leadership and communication that caused certainly the position we're in, and that resulted in the report of October of 2018 highlighting the poor directions that Red Bank was heading. And you had an opportunity to read that government strategy group report that was done by Mr. Hartnett and Mr. DeRoberts, correct?
Briefly.
And I know it's hard to believe that it's been 5 years since you retired. Congratulations on that. In your recollection, did you have any disputes with the findings?
Mike, I read it once, and I
Okay.
don't think I went to the end.
That's fine.
There was a little dispute about some old permits that the state had actually was waiting to adopt the law, saying those inspections weren't required, and that seemed to be the biggest issue that I really had an issue with. And I learned about that like the day before I retired, or the last department head meeting I had. I really didn't get into it. At the time, I had a son who was playing Big Ten football, and I had to travel, and I retired. I had to take care of family and start arranging for that.
Yep, and you've done a tremendous job, and Red Bank thanked you for your 35 years of service, and I had the privilege of working with you for a few years, and I certainly wanted to thank you for coming this evening in the great state of Tennessee. Correct? Are you in Georgia? I'm not quite sure. Georgia. So are we going bull, or are we still cheering for the Georgia Bulldogs?
Georgia Bulldogs, absolutely.
Okay.
My two nephews graduated.
Just checking, because I'm sure that tomorrow when people listen to it in Georgia, you might have a few police officers following in the event that you may have said Roll Tide or anything. So I do appreciate you coming on, and I wish you all the best, and please give everyone a big hug and kiss to your family and to Donna.
And to yours too, Mike.
Thank you. Well, I guess it's my turn. Hi, Stanley. It's a pleasure to meet you. I moved to Red Bank at the end of 2015. So at the time, I've only able to work with your organization, I guess, for 2 years, but I wasn't as involved in local government at the time. So I'm sorry I didn't really get to meet you. The other commissioners have asked some really good questions. So there are just a couple of things I I have that would be just really short questions. One of the questions I have is, do you feel that the present form of government would provide representation to all the citizens in our community? In the sense that, was there representation in the hiring and firing and, well, more hiring and interactions with the residents and departments?
Well, hiring and firing, we sort of guided by need of the position and qualifications of the person. And of course, we did background checks and that sort of thing, and checked with former employers. That's sort of basic,
Yep.
you know, in any business.
Mhm.
And we tried to treat it like a business. And unfortunately, sometimes we make once we were narrowed down the top candidates, usually myself and or the sometimes in the bigger departments, they would do the interviews, and then they would come to me with some recommendations that they wanted to present to the council. And I would sort of be the vetting, you know, what about this? What about that? Any red flags? That sort of thing. Who's your top candidate? And you know, be prepared to justify your recommendations. And then it would go to the chairperson, and usually a meeting would be with the chairperson, and then they bring it to the council. And it worked well. I mean, it worked well for many years. I mean, shoot, I had to recommend we hire Pam. I mean, it was great. She was a reporter. Who's better to take minutes than a reporter? And she knew the town, and she had covered the Red Bank beat. And I think, Pam, were you my first hire?
Yes.
Yes. So there we go back. But sometimes it was tough getting a decision, or I have three council people with all three different opinions.
Mm.
And then two would choose somebody else, and then the chair would choose someone else. And unfortunately, sometimes that didn't work out.
Right.
So
do you feel like if you had the authority to hire people directly, and I'm not talking like department heads, I'm talking, you know, the people that are really taking care of our town, the clerks, the folks at DPW and in the various offices, would have that made that process a little bit more efficient for you?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Mhm. And what about the collaboration with people from council going directly to department heads or employees? As you said, you were not being kept in the loop, so that created some causes for contention. It sounds to me like that. It seems like you would have advocated for a clear chain of command. And as you mentioned, to treat the borough, the day-to-day operations of the borough like a business. And so you would be like a CEO, do the day-to-day running, and then the council would do the strategic planning. They would be more like the board of directors. Would that have worked better for you, do you think?
Yes, but the problem was as administrator, I was an annual appointment.
Okay.
I was tenured as in my code official positions, but the administrator was an annual appointment, and it made it difficult. One, you certainly wanted to get reappointed, and there are times where I felt that maybe I wasn't as supported as I wished to be, but you know, I got reappointed, and a lot of times I would, if I was questioning about it, I would go ask people, everything okay? And
I think we're losing you. I think we lost Stanley.
people,
Oh.
There we go.
Okay, are you back? Okay, great.
Yes, so it was at some time, if I had a greater authority, the ordinance was very vague as to my hiring and firing abilities. But when I was allowed to work with the department heads to get the best candidates, and usually money would come into play because we had union contracts with some of our employees, and a lot of times the hires wanted more money, and a lot of times we couldn't accommodate them. And if it was at the point where we couldn't find somebody and we'd have to make a change, I'd have to go to the council to agree to a different salary range.
I see.
But I also got to work with the unions and move the conditions for the employees. And after a while,
I think we're losing you again.
that became less contentious as well because their representatives. Hello.
I think we lost you a little bit when you started talking about the unions.
Well, over time, I was able to establish a relationship with the union, the labor union, and to the point that they were called, and we had issues or there was questions. We need to have a meeting, and it worked out pretty well. And we've had a lot less strife towards the end of my career because we're able to. And we did pretty well. I think I negotiated a contract just before I left that was they were very happy with. I think it addressed a lot of their concerns. We were able to work out, some compromise so we can get that contract signed. But it basically is trying to use people skills and sort of make everybody part, like everybody's included, like a team approach to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because you get nothing done by yourself.
Well, that's very true. Yes. So I have one more question, and it's about Red Bank in general. So you started working with the borough, I guess, 38 years ago. Well, more than 38. And at that time, what was Red Bank then compared to when you retired in 2017?
I missed part of that. Want to repeat that question?
Sure. So my question is, when you first started working for the borough, Red Bank was a different kind of town than what it was when you retired back in 2017. And I want to know your thoughts about what do you think about the changes that have been happening in town over the course of your career? Did it get bigger, smaller, more complex, dead bank, red bank, hot bank, whatever? Yeah. I think we lost him again. Are you back?
I'm back now. I can hear you, but okay. Now Pam's moving. Pam, you're the only one that's moving on my screen.
Everything's good on this end.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. What was different back then?
Mm-hmm. I think we're losing him again. I think we've lost him. Stanley, we can't hear you.
I can't hear you. Mike.
Okay. I can hear you. Can you hear us?
How's that? Yes. All right.
Okay.
I'll try again.
Okay. Sure. So this is the question of, given that Red Bank has changed so much in 38 years, and I'm just going to compress because I had a follow-on question to that, but I'll just add it in here. Do you think the current form of government would be best as it is to meet the needs of the borough, or and as you had mentioned, maybe having a strong administrator as opposed to a weak administrator, would that work better for how we are now? And I think we lost him.
Would it be a possibility for Stanley to call in to kind of finish out? I know he's kind of logged into Zoom right now.
I think so.
He did sign on as a audience attendee. I did send him a link as a panelist. I don't know if that makes any difference, but he's coming in as an attendee. He's not in as a panelist. But I don't know if that would make a difference or not.
Why don't we move to our next presenter, Chair? And then if Stanley is able to reconnect, he can always answer your question that you may have.
Absolutely. So at this point, we were supposed to have Ziad Shahadi, our former business administrator who was here from 2018 to 2021. He did have a previous commitment. And
Hey, Chair, you know, Stanley is calling me on my cell. I can put him on. Hey, Stan. Yeah. Hey, let me.
Hey.
All right, hold on. I'm going to put you on my speaker. And he hung up.
Okay.
Never mind.
That's fine. I think we could move on to our next presenter. As I was saying, Ziad was unable to make the meeting tonight. He had a previous commitment, and he's actually providing a scholarship to from the American Legion up in his town. So if he's able to join in, he'll just hop on the call, but if not, we'll just continue to move on. So at this point, we do have our next speaker or our next interviewee, and that would be Chief Darren McConnell. Hi, Darren.
Hey, Nancy, how are you?
Good. So at this point, we just like for you to give an intro, about 1 or 2 minutes, and then we'll get started with the questions.
Sure. So, as you know, I serve as the police chief and the interim borough administrator or business administrator. I've been with Red Bank for a little over 33 years as a police officer, about 8 years as police chief, and about 9 months as the interim administrator after Mr. Shahadi left. So I've been serving in both roles for that period of time.
Okay. Let's do this same order again. Kate, do you have any questions for our interim BA?
Chief, thank you for joining us this evening. My questions center on the same things. I'm very interested in hearing about your ideas around efficacy, what you were handed, what changes, you know, or how you want to operate. Do you ever feel your hands are tied? How many hoops do you have to jump through? That kind of, you know, question about getting the job done, right, without interference. You know, obviously sometimes things take a while because there's compliance, right? You just have to take all the steps. But I'm, you know, especially in light of a couple of the things that Stanley just shared with us, considering input breaks in chain of command, you know, which is something that I, as a school person, right, I'm in public schools, we use chain of command. That's how we have to operate, right? So I'd like to sort of just start off with that, and then we'll see. I'm not going to continue to re-ask things I know some of my other commissioners also want to get into. So.
Sure. So, you know, starting off with efficacy, you know, I think, you know, government it's difficult to achieve efficiency in government. We have, as you said, hoops to jump through. We have purchasing laws, we have contract laws that we're abiding by. We have to wait for legislative action sometimes from our council or from even some outside government entities. So it's difficult for government to move fast. So, you know, when you compare efficacy, it's got to be with other government entities, not with what we would see in the private world. So, you know, with that said, I think we do the best we can with the tools we have and the constraints we're bound by. I don't really feel there's a lot of interference in achieving efficiency. You know, I guess the concern would be that when, as an administrator, when I'm deciding the best course of action, I have to consider, will I have the majority support of the council before I make that decision, because ultimately they are the authority on it. So, you know, that's always in the back of your mind as you're making the decision on which way to go or which way to proceed in the 2 weeks between today and the next meeting. And that sometimes does slow us down and takes away from our efficiency, because we have to, you know, really we have to wait for official action, but we're also in the back of our mind as we're going through the necessary steps for deciding on our own whether or not we will have that support or not. And that's probably the most difficult part of the job is trying to determine that independently. You know, as we're moving along, we can't always just stop the clock for weeks at a time waiting for the next meeting. So that's, I mean, it's part of the system and that's the way it is. We obviously don't have a meeting daily. So, you know, so we work the best we can within the constraints we have and try to be as effective as we can. And I think, you know, dealing with what we have, I think we do a good job of being effective, if not necessarily as efficient as we'd like.
Stanley had brought up the some of the concern about the change in meetings and administrative presence at meetings that, you know, for whatever reason, as a leader or as a decision maker, the BA had to be present at. Do you see any change in your period of time? And I know it's not a long period of time, but any changes, or is it kind of just status quo in terms of these are the number of meetings that we have to hold in order to get things done? This is how we keep departments in order. I'm trying to liken it to other, you know, similar sized organizations, right? Keeping other towns going. We don't see what's going on in the background. And it, you know, while I know there's a number of employees, it sort of seems like we're relatively busy, but small operation in town. How do you manage taking time away from perhaps the physical labor of work to have these meetings if they are increasing? Are there changes that you've been able to make to satisfy the needs of a town that seems to be, I'm going to say flux, and I don't, you know, mean that, I'm using that kind of not quantitatively, but like, you know, we have a lot of people during the day for work, for pleasure, for whatever. And so we meet the needs of that. And then there's the nighttime bedroom community, right? And are we kind of in a holding pattern? Do you anticipate these major changes being made? And does the structure that you're in right now fit that?
I think the structure fits. I assume you're talking about internal meetings and not necessarily governing body meetings. So I'm not really, my style is not to have a lot of department head meetings or group meetings. I don't feel they're all that effective. I think I've had 2 in the 9 months that I've been administrator. I feel like you get a lot more done one-on-one. Dealing with the department, each department is very specific to itself. In most cases, unless you're talking about the budget, which was one of my meetings, was to develop the budget, which everybody has to follow the same protocol. But otherwise, I feel you get a lot more done on a one-on-one meeting with the department heads, and I felt that's been effective. I feel that it hasn't been bogged down by administrative measures, and it's just a matter of getting the objective achieved. And I think that's worked pretty well. We have had a couple of committee meetings, and just for clarification, I know there's 2 different definitions of committees, and especially in Red Bank, there's volunteer committees that are made up. I know you serve on one of them, or maybe 2 of them actually. So, and then the council committees, and we have had a few of those council committee meetings with members of the governing body and the department heads and myself, and they've been productive. I just feel that they have to be channeled towards the right the right goals, what they're actually there to achieve. And it's not necessarily the day-to-day operation, but more policy setting. And I think, in more recent years, we've been very effective at keeping it to that, and hopefully that continues.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Taylor. Thanks.
Good evening, Chief. Thank you for joining us.
Anyway,
I want to kind of, again, pick up where Kate left off. You mentioned having one-on-one meetings as opposed to kind of general department meetings. That's a departure from prior administrators' operating procedure. Is that something you've implemented?
it is, and in all fairness, part of it was due to COVID and just changing the way we do things because of COVID, but I'm also just not a large meeting type of person. I feel you get more achieved unless you have one broad message to put out. I think those large meetings just take up people's time without being extremely effective.
Okay. Also, I mean, you obviously were serving as police chief both under Stanley and under Ziad, and I know that Ziad brought some pretty significant modernization to the borough as far as just really updating us into the 21st century with a lot of our digital things, the ability to host a Zoom meeting, for instance, we didn't have as recently as 5-6 years ago. So, those changes, how have you seen them as improving the efficiency of the governing body and the interaction with the staff at 90 Monmouth?
I think they've been tremendous. I don't know how I would get my job done now without Zoom meetings and being able to bounce from one meeting to another quickly. Even though I don't encourage those large meetings, but there's still a lot of small meetings during the day. So the technology has been great. I think it's been, from my perspective, great for the governing body, and it provided a lot of opportunity for the public to have input into meetings. There's larger attendance at various committee meetings that I've been involved in, not just internal ones within the borough, but throughout the borough and with other organizations that I'm part of. So I think it's been a great plus.
Okay. Every system, every structure has its benefits and its detractions. If you can, to the extent that you're able to, the borough form is fairly loose unless it's tightened up by particular statutes and strictures put in place by the governing body. Can you list maybe the best attributes of the borough form that you've experienced in your time in Red Bank, or is that too vague of a question?
No, it's not. I think sometimes our attributes can also be our detriments if they're not handled properly. So, like, for example, I think probably the clearest example of that is those council committee meetings. I think those council committees, I've dealt with them since in the 8 years or so that I've been the police chief, dealt with our public safety committee, and it's been beneficial. We've been able to get initiatives started. We've been able to have smooth processes for hirings, for promotions, for changes in our structure, civilianizing certain aspects by going through committee. So, and it provides an opportunity for us to have in-depth conversations with the council people that are on our committee in order to obtain support and to explain ourselves in depth more than we would maybe in a public meeting where we're trying to keep our time respectful of everybody else. The downside of that is that if those committees go beyond their scope and their role, that they can be a detriment to the department head and to the operation of the borough. I personally, in my time as administrator, haven't seen that happen, but over the course of my career, I've seen where it's happened in certain departments. So I think it's largely dependent on who those individuals are and how they conduct themselves, not just the elected officials, but also the department heads, the administrator, whoever's involved.
Yeah, I mean, your comments and those that preceded with Stanley, it does definitely come down to the individuals who are in the governing body and able to make direction or give direction to the administrator. And for me, that the borough form itself lends itself to that kind of looseness with basically kind of the whims of the personalities. Do you support the idea of a more structured business-like CEO type style of administrator that just can inform the council As Stanley indicated, or is the current form something that you think still works for Red Bank?
Well, I think if I understood what Stanley said correctly, the current form as it stands today is different than what Stanley worked under. And I do support that form, or at least closer to that form. The intricacies of it could be changed, but generally speaking, I think that a strong administrator has the ability to make us, to Kate's point, more efficient in carrying out our duties. The point that Stanley talked about considerably was the hiring process for regular employees, not so much department heads, but regular employees. It becomes very cumbersome, and you actually have especially in today's market, have the ability to lose employees by any delays that are caused because of a need to fill a bureaucratic step that's really not necessary for your standard employees.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Ben. Thank you.
Hello, Chief.
Hey, Ben.
I wanted to say how grateful I am that you're here. I mean, I was sort of surprised when I saw you on the list, because I was thinking the acting administrator, testifying before the Charter Study Commission, this probably could make your job more complicated, depending on what you do or don't say. I guess myself. Yeah, no, I know. I mean, because if you had kind of like what I was asking Stanley, you've been a chief for a long time, you've been involved in borough government for a long time. I mean, if you had a wish list of things you'd like to see in your ideal form of government, to deliver services and to, respond to the policies and needs of the people, what would you advise? Is there anything you can say to us that would be helpful?
I really think that in my 9 months, I've been relatively fortunate. It might not necessarily always seem that way from watching a council meeting or whatever, but I think overall we have reached consensus on most of the important issues that face the borough on a day-to-day. For example, the Broad Street issues recently, the water main, the sewer main issues that we encountered. It took a couple of months or a month or two, but we came to a consensus and everybody agreed on the best course of action. So I think it's a more matter of streamlining government operations. If we were to continue on the course we're on now, it's more matter of streamlining it and having a plan for the future. I think if we lack anything, it's a 5 or a 10-year plan sometimes, especially when it deals to things such as our infrastructure. I think if we were to continue on the course we're on today, that would be our next step, is to start looking forward a little bit more than we currently do.
That concludes my questions for you, Chief, because unless there's anything you want to add.
No, thank you.
I'm going to hand it over, I guess, to Mr. DuPont, Commissioner DuPont.
Chief, Happy New Year. And once again, thanks for walking in on the hot seat.
That's all right.
Hot seat. You know what? I guess I just have a couple questions, and you kind of hit the nail on the head with, if we gave you anything you wanted, and knowing that the chief complaints of our residents seem to be a lack of efficiency, but also transparency and hearing their voices, what tools would you want as a borough administrator? Because it would appear that it's not the form of government, but maybe the lack of tools in providing the services, to our residents, but also hearing our residents.
So I guess in my other role, and the one that I've been in for so many years, law enforcement is based all on policy, and policy is set and then it's followed, and whether the chief is here or the captain is here or there's nobody here and it's a relatively new officer working, they know the policy that has to be followed and they follow it, and that's why the system works. And I feel that we, looking on the broader scope of borough operations, there are not a lot of set policies. There are not a lot of written policies. There's ordinances to follow and there's resolutions that have been passed, but there's not a lot of policies. And in my short time as administrator, we've passed a couple of policies that are relatively minor in nature, a monument policy, and there was another one about water and sewer refunds. But if there's policy that's set in advance, and then the administrator or whoever is in that role, department head, has the ability to simply follow that policy, it would streamline government and make it more. It would make it easier for those in control of the day-to-day operations to actually follow through with their duties without wondering whether or not they're going to be challenged later on, or whether or not they're making a mistake because they're not following what we all work. At the end of the day, we all answer to the governing body. But if you don't have that roadmap beforehand, you're not sure exactly what you're following, and you're hoping you're doing the best you can.
Yeah, and you had the opportunity to review the government strategy group report, correct?
Yes, but honestly, it's been probably a year since I've looked at it.
And that is one of the tools that is repeated in the report, and that is having policy, but having a strategic vision. And that doesn't appear to be by way of a form of government. That appears to be a lack of leadership. Would that be correct?
I mean, regardless, I'm not that familiar with the different forms of government, but regardless of the form of government, you could set policy.
Right. And so, taking away, so one of the things that you want to, I hear your voice, and that is, hey, listen, we got to set policy, and that would enable the borough to operate more efficiently, as well as giving the department heads roadmap to achieve their goals. I think that's probably the number one takeaway from your presentation. Would that be accurate?
That's correct.
I think you're doing a good job in your 9 months. Just want to put it out there, even though my vote really doesn't matter, but I think you're doing a great job. I've heard some great residents speak that you're very, very attentive, and you are going to be losing a institutional giant over there in our borough clerk. So whoever fills their shoes are going to have boots. But anyways, I really appreciate you giving us the input, especially your insight with respect to roadmap. So we do appreciate it.
Thank you for the kind words.
Thanks,
and I'm still working on convincing Pam to stay.
Well, again, it's a great place to work, even better place to live. Thanks, Chief.
Thanks. Nancy, I think
You're muted.
Yeah, I'm yapping away to the mute button. Thank you so much for joining us today. You answered a lot of my questions regarding, the making government efficient and sustainable. And as you hit the point, you do need set policies in government operations. So, and I do agree with you on that. So one of the questions I do have is, under the Borough form of government, how are you evaluated or how is a business administrator evaluated to determine how well they're doing? I'm just asking out of curiosity.
I believe the process is that we're evaluated by the mayor, but to be honest with you, I've only been in this role, as you know, for 9 months, and I haven't received an evaluation yet. So all I can go by is my day-to-day interactions with the mayor and the governing body.
Yes, because as you said, without a set policy or a strategic plan to go by, like, how do you measure the effectiveness of how well you're doing, which I personally think you are doing a great job. I just put that out there as well. But, also with, within the other departments as well. So that's all I have. And thank you so much for coming. I appreciate
Thanks
that.
for having me. Thank you.
Okay, so Mike, you want to take over? Does anybody else have questions for Darren? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but yeah. No, okay, go ahead, Mike.
Sure, Chair. So, I don't have any specific notes, but I guess a couple of items. I know that Mr. Shahadi was scheduled to attend tonight, but was trying to fit us into a narrow window he had with another engagement. My understanding is that it's just a scheduling issue and that he'll likely appear at a future meeting. that I know that we'll be working to schedule, and we'll keep the commission posted on that. And then I believe the only other, I'm certainly happy to answer any questions, but I don't have any specific update in my Charter Commission attorney report, other than I believe, there's going to be further discussion about future interviewees and other parties. And I'm certainly happy to take whatever direction is given from the commission to help facilitate that between meetings.
Great, thank you. What we do have next on the agenda is the assignment of work, next meeting actions. We did share a list of all the departments that have to be interviewed or that we would like to conduct interviews with. And one of the things we have to figure out is how to split the work. We did talk about having a subcommittee to do that. And because these are borough employees, it is actually best to do this via a subcommittee, maybe two commissioners. So how would you like to go about divvying up the work? Don't all talk at once.
I'll volunteer with whatever you want me to do. Either work
Okay.
with, any one of the commissioners. Just, I don't know how many departments. It's funny. I was just calculating. There's like, is the chief still on the phone?
Yeah.
Just
Still in the meeting.
divvying up the departments. Say we have 10 departments. Give everyone 2 and move on. I mean, I know that I was on the finance committee and the police committee and the fire department. I'd be more than happy to participate on those departments interviews if someone else wants to join me. If not, it's okay.
All right, so you want police and fire?
Again, I served on those committees when I was on council, so I am familiar with those committees. I am familiar with the operation.
And weren't you the head of finance?
Yeah,
Weren't you the head of finance too when you were at council?
Finance and the police and fire. So those two committees I was on for a moment of time. So I'd be more than happy to chair that committee or work with the chair. It doesn't matter to me.
Okay. That sounds good. So I am just jotting this down. You're willing to do fire, police, and what was the third one?
Yeah, I'll do fire, police, finance, public works. How's that?
Yep, sounds good.
I'm interested in doing public works as well, so I'd be happy to join Michael on that.
Sure.
I'm very curious about some of our, I'll say the wayward cousins of town, library, parks and
Yeah.
rec. Those are 2 areas that they align with interest and familiarity. So
Yeah, I mean, I served I was a member of the Parks and Rec Committee as a resident before I was on the council, and then I was a liaison there. I was a liaison with the EC. I was on the Finance Committee. I served on the Public Safety Committee, Fire and Police, so I'm flexible wherever you need me to be in the interview process. I'm willing to help out. The only thing I think with respect to the department heads and maybe Chief can give us some insight, I believe we would try to conduct those during business hours, so we're not holding employees, past their contractual hours. So that may take some a little extra scheduling to make sure we're all available at this time.
I agree.
and I'm assuming we're fine using Zoom for these purposes.
I would think so.
Yeah, I think, again, I think that's fine. I mean, it should be during, at the convenient time of the employees, not, putting any burden on their schedules.
Yes, I agree.
Oh, Nancy, I'm happy wherever you put me. I'll be happy with Mike Dupont on fire and police or whatever.
Okay. Fire and police, yep. And
But you can put me wherever you think is a good fit.
Okay.
Unfortunately, most of my background on municipal stuff is more with the Board of Education.
okay. I think I'll take building department. Anybody want to join?
I think I was on that too. I think I served on just about every committee over 3 years. I packed a lot into 3 years. So wherever you need me, and maybe we can kind of, parse it up and then get the commissioners to sign off on it,
Yeah, absolutely.
a
Okay.
little more in detail.
Sure. So just getting a general idea, we have about 16 departments, so each person can work with 3 or more departments if you wish. And that would be available. I'll send out this draft after the meeting and then we can hash it out from there. Okay. Is there anything else? For the next meeting actions, I would also ask that we can start the interviews as soon as we can so that we can keep our goal of completing our study of the current form of government by the end of March. One of the things I was also thinking about, and I briefly discussed it with our board commission attorney and the vice chair, is to perhaps have an open meeting with the public, an informational meeting. And we could possibly arrange that for the next, our next time we meet. It would just be an open Q&A with the commissioners about the forms of government, the existing form of government, to answer any questions that they have about the current form of government. And I didn't know how you all felt about that.
No, I think that would be helpful, but I do think that in order to make that a productive meeting, that we put some information out on our website. And that's one of the reasons why I had initially brought up the memo that Mike Collins prepared outlining, our time frame. What would also be helpful, I think, Chair, would be putting, and I was just looking for it, I couldn't find it. The schedule that we're looking to keep. I know that we have until August 2nd in which to complete our study. But I think that schedule that we put, I think it's up on the website. I could be wrong.
It's a proposed schedule. It's not a final, obviously. It's a little subject to how we operate, how fast we get through certain things.
Well, I think it's a guideline for us to put it out on our website, and that, we have until August 2nd to conclude. But I think that it's important that we put it out for the public so that they kind of understand the guideline. And then the next thing that we should be putting out is something for the public to read so that they understand what the timeline is, but also the decisions that we have to make. I thought the memo that Mike prepared over the weekend was simply just a legal outline of what our obligations are. That's pretty clear. So I do think that if everyone else agrees, that we put that on the website, because it does set forth some timelines, some time periods.
I'm a little concerned about that. I mean, that was prepared for the purposes of informing the commission. It's attorney-client, document. There's no obligation or issue with proposing a timeline and putting that on our website. It's already up. We already have links to the resources for the public as far as the form of government, the types of government that we're going to be investigating, the Faulkner Act. Those things are certainly purposeful for public domain and useful. I'm a little wary of taking something that was prepared for the commission by legal counsel.
Yeah, but I think the issue here, though, is if we're going to base transparency, and the legal memo just basically outlines the executive summary, how we got here. It gives us the applicable law, which you could find in any statute. It gives a legal analysis of why the Charter Study Commission is in place, and then it does give us timelines, and I think that's helpful for the public to understand. It did take me a few readings to understand what our obligations are, what our decisions are, but also the timeline that is set forth in the guideline that we had last week was simply a guideline. The timeline placed in the legal memorandum is outlined in a statute, and thus we have until August 2nd. There's no surprises. There's no litigation in here. There's no secrets in this memo, but I do think that it's really important that we educate the residents on what we're about. They voted for us. They voted for us to make our decisions and our arguments transparent. We shouldn't have anything to hide. The legal memorandum that's been provided is really an outline of what the statute states, and it provides a timeline. The timeline.
To that point, we've already provided a timeline. I mean,
but
it's a guide. We don't have, the statute is the statute. We have 9 months. That is a well-known and obvious fact.
Yep.
Beyond that, the timeline for our specific meetings and the conduct that we're going to be having during those meetings is flexible. We don't know everything just yet. We have several months to accomplish this, and we are working our way through. We have provided stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3, and stage 4 will be the presentation of the final memo. I don't think we need to produce some I don't know what the purpose is. Everything you described is already out in the public.
I think that we should move into executive session so that we can discuss this, the memo.
What's the
clear about that.
What's the basis for executive session?
It's a privileged memo that we're discussing right now.
Document is privileged, yeah.
There's a limited amount of things that we can go into exec for.
I'm comfortable, Commissioner, that you could enter executive session to obtain legal advice on the applicability of attorney-client privilege to a subject document, if that's what the commission's intent is.
I have no objection if you want to support the decision on going into exec and setting forth the reasons for it. I have no problem going in it.
I'd like attorney advice on this.
Yeah.
So let's.
Sure, I have no objections to that.
And one thing I'd like to make clear is that this information is already made public. If you look at the guideline that's on our website that documents the steps that we have to go through as a Charter Study Commission, and it also has, those documents also have the legal statutes in there. What we did is we provided a graphic with a roadmap which shows, our general timelines. If it gets to the point where we want to add specific dates to that, well, we can look at doing that. But I think that's something that I feel more comfortable talking with an attorney or board attorney.
Chair, to Commissioner Okeson's point, I think if there's going to be any further discussion on this, we should just go into executive right now rather than have some good conversation that may be outside, and the public will be back out after that. So I don't think this is by any means the end of the meeting.
That's not that
technologically easy. Is this going to be a difficult one? Okay.
Yes, that's going to be very difficult. We are currently in a public meeting, and I can't host 2 meetings at the same time. We would have to end this meeting. The public would not know when we were coming back.
No, what I would suggest is that we entertain this at the next meeting.
Or just go ahead and have your public comment and then go into your executive session to discuss the memo.
I think
that's
would be
fine.
fair.
You can do that too.
Yeah.
I would prefer to leave this at the end. Okay, so the next, oh, yes, Ben, yes.
Well, I don't have a hand raise feature on my Zoom. So I just wanted to, I don't like interrupting people. So I'm just I think we should listen to our attorney for the legal advice. Although, I'm sure Mike, you're a great attorney, but since we're paying him to be our attorney, I think we should listen to him. At least maybe we'll wind up agreeing with you. But we should hear our counsel first. And the reason I'm moving in these gestures is because actually, Mike, you're on that side of my screen and our attorney's on this side of the screen. And the other thing is I wanted to just, and kind of what Pam was just talking about, I think we should, if we're going to have executive session tonight, which I'm fine with, why don't we do that at the end like the council does it? Go through, public comment, commissioner comments, all that first. And then, conclude everything in the meeting that we can reasonably conclude, then have our executive session with the attorney, and then come out. I think what the council usually does is they just keep the meeting open and they walk to another meeting and then they come back. But
that's the borough. In those cases, the borough attorney opens a second meeting, and
yeah,
I can actually do that. I can set up a Zoom and send it to the commission if that would help Pam, or call a number.
I think we could, but
taking action.
So
I mean, the commission, I don't believe any action's being taken.
So there's really no reason to return other than to adjourn.
Correct.
So if you do your public comment and go into executive session, you're not doing any resolutions or taking any official action. So there's no really reason to come back into a public session.
that's correct. I'm prepared to
That's right.
leave it to the end.
All right, so
Well,
that
the
can,
other option is
that's
the
it.
attorney
So
would
frankly,
I hope we just go through our agenda.
Yeah,
And
the
give
other
the
option,
public the
attorney goes
opportunity to
second
speak
meeting and
without
everybody sits and
waiting too
waits.
long.
Yes, I
We
agree.
don't have the public waiting on us till, to come
Yeah,
out.
it's whenever, yeah. Okay, so we all agree that we're going to have our executive session at the end, and then we're good. So the next thing that we do have is our commission member remarks. So have at it. Yes, Ben, your hand is raised.
Okay, I would like to have an additional public portion in our meetings. I mentioned this, I think, at the first or second meeting. And I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but I like that our council and actually our Board of Education has this comments for items on the agenda, at the beginning, so that, if somebody has something relevant to tell us before, well, we interview X, Y, or Z, or we talk about something. I think it's good to know those things, at least factor in their questions before we deliberate. The problem with having executive session, the public input at the end only is that that's just at the end of our meeting and really can't factor in any comments or questions that the public may have. And kind of to what I think all of us want to have is thorough and open a public process as possible. And, so I think that would be a good thing to do, because we want to have this process, in every way possible above board and error on the side of, more is better. I'm even willing to meet more often. I know some of you have concerns about that in your schedules. I get it. But I'm okay with having two, limited, of course, to 1 5-minute comment, just like at the council meetings. And that's it. That's my comment.
I think that's a good comment, and I think it would be essential because we are working for the public and we will have a lot of public engagement. I'm totally okay with having a public comment at the beginning of the meeting and then at the end where we traditionally have our public comment.
Yeah, and
Kate?
it's like the way the council does it, items on the agenda, comment on an item on the agenda, not just an open comment. They have to, if we have, that's what I would advise. Just like the Red Bank Council, Mayor.
Yeah, that limitation is critical, because otherwise it's just open season. And we already have a format for that. The public can make any comment they want at the end of the meeting. If we want to have public comment on anything that's on the agenda at the outset, that's fine. When the agenda item is, a presentation, there's nothing to comment on because you haven't seen the presentation. So hopefully, the public will recognize that.
Thank you. Kate?
We are elected to represent the residents' interests. We have an incredibly narrow scope. It is not even closely aligned with that of council or other major bodies. And so I'm actually lukewarm to double open comment, especially if we have people that we've scheduled to speak. Perhaps there's another venue for which we could, upon the release of an agenda, we could take direct communication from interested residents in the interest of the folks that we're having. I understand on different meetings that are specifically for public comment or things like that, all's fair. That's it.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, you know what? I kind of join in with Kate. Predominantly what you see with the second public comment is a comment with respect to a consent agenda or something that's very specific. To have another public comment section, I'm not quite, I think it's redundant because most people aren't going to, look at your agenda here. We don't have any resolutions and people aren't going to be able to analyze or comment on the presentations. So I think that, having a double, the meetings that Ben had referenced, both the Board of Education and the Borough Council meeting, there's a specific purpose for that second comment. I don't think that you need for a second comment is required just because the agenda, there's nothing to comment on. They're not going to certainly call anything on roll call. They're not going to comment on, reports and presentations that haven't been done. But I do think that in the event that, our agenda seems to implode and there's some additional areas that we need to add to it, and there's a requirement for public comment, I think we certainly analyze that. But I think at this, we've kept our agenda pretty simple, and easy to follow, and it's on all the social medias. So I just think that at this point in time, I don't think there's any need to add to a public comment. If anything, we may need to do that if in fact, the agenda seems to increase for either consent agendas or resolutions or something like that.
Okay. So it sounds like,
Well, I mean, I don't know if we want to have a debate, but, I've been on the other side of this. And, I think I remember council members saying things like that before we added that at the beginning. And, if there's something that, I would be interested if I were not on this commission coming before the meeting and say, I would hope you would ask Commissioner so-and-so or former administrator so-and-so, this particular question. At the end of the meeting to have a comment, it's all over with. You can't really have any meaningful input as a member of the public, at that point on the agenda of a meeting. But I know we don't have to, we don't agree with it on this, but I think it's one of the best things our mayor and council has done is having that additional. And most of the time, nobody says anything. Most of the time, or maybe one person or two people, there's usually not very much engagement there because it's specifically just on items on the agenda.
Well, that's the key piece, Ben. It's a fairly limited scope. As long as the public is aware of that, I'm piggybacking on both Commissioner DuPont and Commissioner Okeson's points. So, we are a representative body. So, those comments are other means of ways of getting, those thoughts and feelings.
I'm saying my point of view, and I'm certainly okay. I'm very honored to work with all of you on this. I'm just giving you my impression and my opinions. That's all.
No, I'm happy to have as much input as possible, but that particular opportunity is very limited, and that just as long as the public's aware of that, then okay. And again, to your point, it probably won't be taken up very often because to Commissioner DuPont's point,
and like I said, the problem with having the public comment at the end is the whole meeting is basically concluded. You can't really have any input on anything that was discussed or brought up. That's all. I made my point. I'm going to mute myself.
so the option here would be to have a public comment at the beginning of the meeting for agenda items only. Given the limited scope of the agenda, that means realistically, we may not get that many questions. And then at the end, you can have an open public comment. Is that what I'm understanding from everyone?
That's what I would like, but I don't know if I have the majority here.
And I also recognize that, people may not be able to stay on all the way through the end of the meeting. So, it would be respectful if we could have a small public comment at the beginning of the meeting and just maybe limit it to 3 minutes. I don't think we would have, 20 people commenting at the beginning of the meeting.
The other consideration is the time and appearances of our guests. If we have a public comment at the beginning and 20 people do show up and they all take 3 minutes, then we've delayed our presentation by our guests by now. Not that I think that's going to happen every meeting, but it is a consideration.
So would you consider an option where we have the option to add a public agenda comment and we'll just take it based on what our agenda, see the need to add it based on what's on our agenda? Would that be amicable to everyone?
If we have is that something we can do ad hoc per meeting, or do we need to have a more specific policy? I don't think that really.
I don't think you can do
it ad hoc.
Yeah, I think we either set the policy, and if it's applicable to the meeting, it's one thing. If it's not, then we'll just move through it.
So we'll just do it ad hoc whenever we need it.
No, I'm saying I don't think you can, because you either have a policy or you don't. You either have the meeting public comment option or you don't at the beginning, and it's limited in scope by how we set it. But you can't just do it and say, hey, this meeting we're going to have it.
Why don't we see how our agenda moves in the next couple meetings, and then if it increases and we believe that there's a need for questions from the public early on, we can always make that change. I don't think either one of us on this commission are just strenuously objecting to it. It's just at this point in time, Mark raised a good point, and that is, we do have witnesses or presenters or people where we are interviewing who are on a time constraint. So I just think that we look at the policy, we take it under advisement. Ben, you raised a great point. There are just two different meetings, the Board of Education, the Borough Council. And right now we have a simple agenda. And if that agenda enlarges, I'd certainly be amenable to entertaining it.
Okay, that's fair.
Well, thank you. That's all I can ask for is for you guys to give it some thought, and thank you for listening to me.
Sure. Do we have any more commissioner remarks? Everyone spoke?
No, I'm
Or-
good.
You're good?
I don't have
Mark?
anything to add. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Ben? Okay, there's one more thing I'd like to add. We talked about inviting the current council and then going back, council members for the last 5 years. And I'd like to make a motion to invite council to come to one of our meetings. And we'll conduct an interview with them.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. Any opposed? No? Okay. So.
As I mentioned earlier, Chair, I'm certainly happy to facilitate whatever invites that the commission wishes to extend. I certainly was glad to help out a little bit with some of the invitees for tonight. So if it sounds like there's a desire on the part of the commission to have to extend invites to the mayor and governing body, so I'm certainly happy to assist with that if you'd like. And I guess the only guidance, if so, would be which meeting you're looking to have that invitation extended to.
Why don't we, Chair, split up the invitation? You've got 7 current mayor and council. I'm presuming you are also excluding Mark and I from presenting, since it's within the
Yes.
last 5 years.
Sure.
Appreciate you.
Judge and jury.
I talk to myself enough as it is. I don't know.
So that being said, I mean, Mike makes a good point, and that is, when we want to do our committee interviews, should we be doing it with Pam or Bonnie or Mike? I think we probably should get that straight as to who we are going to be saying, all right, hey, Bonnie or Pam, can I stop in or can I zoom in on this specific day? So I think a little direction on that probably is helpful.
That's a great point, Commissioner. I think between meetings, I'll reach out to chat with Pam's office and through Nancy to kind of determine staffing wise what the best protocols would be. But I certainly could appreciate the commissioners wanting someone to kind of help take the notes, which are obviously the takeaway document from those meetings. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and the other thing that we've asked from day one is to have a specific email for each of us, so that we are not using either work or personal or home or whatever. So I do think that we should make that a priority and have that by next meeting, so that we're all directed to a specific email saying, hey, look, whatever that case might be.
Right. The issue with that is that the borough is presently using G Suite and they're converting over to the Microsoft platform. They're out of licenses under G Suite. And I understand the conversion was supposed to happen last weekend, but it's going to happen this weekend. I've been in touch with Darren, and as soon as the conversion takes place, we will be able to get our email addresses.
Good.
I've been
Okay.
following up on that. Yes.
Very
So
good,
thank you for mentioning that. Okay. At this point,
I'm sorry,
I
just one thing to clarify, Chair. Did the commission have any direction on the invites to the current and recent governing body members, or do you want to adjourn that and decide that at the next meeting? I just wanted to kind of confirm with the commission before
I
presume
just
anything.
split them up. Everyone seems to want to hear from the current mayor and council. So you've got 6 of them. So 3 one meeting, 3 the other meeting, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
Can't have more
I think if we.
than 3, it would constitute a quorum.
Okay, so
Oh,
2.
we have to
Good point.
would the council members have the option of pairing privately via subcommittee, or they should be in public? I think they should be. It should be.
I think the
public.
current council should, we should extend an invite for them to attend a meeting like this, and we can limit it again to a time frame or whatever the issues may be to avoid any quorum concerns.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it'll simply be an interview.
Yeah.
There's a presentation, just an interview like we've done today with the borough administrators, present and past.
Correct.
Sure.
Great. I think what I'll do is I'll reach out and based upon response, schedule the interviews across the next couple meetings, working with the commissioners, and we'll obviously, once we have confirmations, get that squared away on the upcoming agendas.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. At this point, I'm just going to, as we prepare to open for public comment, before I do that, I just want to read the duties of the Charter Study Commission, just so our people who are making public comment do understand that we're only here to study the form of government and to compare with other forms under the laws of this state. And we're just determined whether or not the current form of government could be strengthened, made more clearly responsive or accountable to other people before, or we should look at a changed form of government. So essentially that's what it is. And at this point, I'd like to have a motion to open public comment.
So moved.
Second, Ben second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, I was muted. Aye.
So if anybody wants to comment, they need to raise their hand. If it's on a computer, press *9. If they're on a phone, I have 2 hands raised right now. First person, please identify your name and address and unmute yourself. Is it Christine?
Hello, Christine.
She's had her hand raised for most of the meeting, so I'm not sure if maybe that was an error. We can come back to her.
Okay, that would be fair.
Let's see here.
Are there any other hands raised?
Yes, 1 second. Okay, and there's Dan Reardon. I just
Yep, I'm on it.
name
Can
and
you hear me?
address. Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Dan Reardon, 20 Irving Place. Just a couple of quick comments. One, I don't know if the early comment period is the way to do this, but I'd like to see some mechanism for people to submit questions. There are things that I would have liked to ask Stanley Sickels, but now I can't. So it might be better if they were collected before the meeting. I don't know, but there should be some formal and easy way for people to submit the questions they'd like to have asked. The other thing is, I didn't know Stanley Sickels was going to be on the call. I follow pretty closely what the commission's up to. And as far as I knew, tonight we were going to hear from Z and Chief McConnell. So this is kind of an ongoing concern that the agenda is not set and published very early. And I understand everything's just getting started, but at this point, I'd like to see, who's going to be on next week, tomorrow, if possible. So those are my 2 comments. In general, thanks. You guys are doing a great job.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Just so you know that we are following the OPMA acts in terms of publicly noticing our meetings. Stanley was a late addition, but we did update the document and it was posted. The agenda was posted with the update at that time. And we do apologize that it did not come out in an earlier time frame. We only got confirmation from Stanley today. Okay.
At this point, there are no other hands raised, so I guess I'll give everyone one last chance to raise your hand to comment. And nobody.
So is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so now we adjourn to executive session.
I'll
We
make
have to say the
So
purpose.
Sorry?
yep, it'll
Oh.
be, so
To
the,
discuss-
I'll recommend,
Sorry.
I'll recommend a motion to the Charter Study Commission to enter into executive session to obtain legal advice on the applicability of attorney-client privilege to commission documents. There won't be any return to public session. No further action will be taken. So the public can rest assured that the commission will not be reconvening in public session for any action.
I'll
Is
make
there a
that
motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Who seconded? I'm sorry.
I did, I think.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so how we have to, we all have to log out.
And I guess just an all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Log out, and then you log back into the same link, and we just won't go into a public session. We'll still stay in the, what they call the practice session.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we
Thank you.
leave and we just
Thank
use.
you.
Okay, thanks, Ben.
Pardon? Do you have a question? No? Okay.
no, okay, thanks.
Have a good night, everyone. Yeah, we'll
Good night,
see the
good night,
commission.
everyone.
Good night, public.